All right. Well, thanks for joining today. This is our inaugural, what are we calling this thing? And so it's the Utah SharePoint user group, the UTSPUG or UTSPUG. I don't know, however you pronounce it, depending on, I guess, whether you're in Salt Lake or Utah Valley or somebody else, somewhere else dialing in. But thanks for joining. So this webinar is being sponsored by the Utah SharePoint user group, as well as my company, Collab Talk. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the founder of Collab Talk, and I'm recording this, capturing this, and we'll be sharing this out on YouTube following this. So, we're going to share as broadly as possible. And I'll also have some slides which I'll attach to the recording, but I'll attempt to share at the end when you're done, Mark. If you can leave me like 1 minute at the very end where I can share out those slides, because we have SharePoint Saturday Utah coming on February 3rd. And then just details about the next user group, where we actually have somebody coming in to talk about Skype for Business and the transition to Microsoft Teams. And so it's an interesting Office 365 topic. And Mark, I'll interrupt you and let you know when there's questions.
Sounds good.
So with that, just into quick introduction, and Mark, I'll let you talk about yourself. But Mark Cashman, good friend, longtime member of the SharePoint product team, and has been involved with a lot of the branding around SharePoint as let's say how to describe this, but as the screen says, it's a building block of your intranet. So a lot of the new messaging, I should say, not branding, messaging around SharePoint and around intranets and some of the exciting new features from communication sites and hub sites and the various integrations that are happening for a long time. And I don't know if you're going to talk at all about some of your other favorite topics like video and stream and that kind of stuff as well. But anyway, I'll turn that over to Microsoft's Mark Cashman. Mark, take it away. You've got the rest of the hour.
Thank you, sir, and hello, Utah. I'm happy to be a part of your day today and certainly appreciate your time to learn a little bit more about what SharePoint is doing in the context of your intranet. And we're framing it around that obviously SharePoint has a lot. It supports a lot beyond just intranet. But from an intranet perspective, we like to think in terms of you have a lot of things that you want to accomplish. You've got different sites and information that you need to push out there. You've got a lot of different audience folks that you need to target with various sites, and some of those might be collaborative sites, some of those might be more broadcast oriented. And we like to think of them as building blocks so that you can build out the intranet that you want. And after you've built it, there hopefully will be some of the aspects of the intranet that automatically do a lot of intelligent things for you, or it's just very easy to use to create new sites or to push out new information. So we think of this holistically as your intranet across both collaboration and communication, and have some explicit offerings like team sites, communication sites, hub sites, and then some of the glue that binds, which is your ability to make them look how you want them to look, both from color spectrum and patterns to the actual content that you lay out on the page, so that it is a really nice experience both in web and mobile. And some of these may be just informative type sites. Some of these might be more interactive where you're collecting information. So it might be more business application focused. And some of it might be more driven by what we call the Microsoft graph, which gives a lot of intelligence in the system to be able to derive a more a narrow view on content that we think is most relevant to the person that's logged in. And so we use those as intelligent services across these different site types and within other applications to help narrow you into most relevant people and most relevant content. And then, of course, after you get into the content itself, we want it to be a very engaging environment, so that if you want to share something, like something, promote it, if you want to paste it into an email, those kinds of things, we want that to be really easy to do, both in the web and on your mobile device. And I will, hopefully with luck, show you what it all looks like through the SharePoint mobile app, and of course through an intranet browser, so you can see what it all looks like. So I'll be giving a pretty comprehensive demo, but just have a few things that I want to set up so that when we talk about the intranet, you know some of the things that we're describing, and hopefully layer onto that what you have or what you would like to have in place to give you a more refined intranet, one that's more connected to both your people and your content. And then there's the realities of intranets these days. They need to be dynamic. Not only dynamic from a content perspective, you want to see the most relevant things. You don't want static pages. You don't want to always have to program the home page to have the newest article or page that you want to highlight. You want some of those things to flow in automatically. That's part of the dynamic nature. But the other reality is just the sites themselves. So if you have already established sites, something like a record center or a company-wide portal, or maybe a policy center, that may have already existed on SharePoint on premises or in online as something leveraging our publishing infrastructure. Those are a one-sided site type. Certainly, we've got a lot of different intranet solution partner offerings for doing some of those same things, building out sites that have a common look and feel, that have some unique capabilities, some that are out of box, some of which maybe are provided by that solution provider. And then to put it in context, of course, you have a lot of collaboration sites. So the blue circles here represent team sites. The green represents the communication sites that we launched about a year plus ago. And to bring those all together as a collection of sites, obviously these are sites that get created and promoted and put out there. We're now bringing a more out-of-box approach soon in this year, what we call hub sites. So hub sites will help you bring together team sites, collaboration sites, even existing team sites, the classic ones, and to bring them all together so that you have a connection that then gives you the ability to roll up information from those associated sites, and of course to disseminate from the top down a common look and feel, and even things like scoping the search, so that if you searched from the hub, you would search across all of the joined sites. But again, holistically, we know that this is already in place or growing. And as things change, this is sort of a subtle click, but as things change and move around, maybe a project takes ownership by a new group, or you have a site that was owned by somebody that then needs to go with them or move into a more parent level, you can easily do that. So joining a hub site is a couple of clicks. Unjoining a hub site and moving it to another, or just having it remain its own silo, is just a few clicks as well. So the dynamic nature of business, we hope, is dictated by how you might want to move the sites around. And of course, the sites are just one aspect of your intranet. We think the most important thing is what's in the site, who's creating it, who has access, and certainly those are all considerations that we take into play. But wanted to walk through just sort of as you're thinking about considering either growing your modern intranet or establishing one, some of the things that we hear a lot back as feedback, and some of the things obviously are then part of the design of what we're putting out there. And I'm going to go pretty quickly through the next two slides. I think they're a little bit more of a leave behind and more of a way for me to get in to show you a whole bunch of stuff in demo as well. But you always have the need for news and announcements, the ability to search and find content. Now with the intelligence of the graph, we hope that some of that search is actually discovery, where you're seeing things based on who you work with, what they work on. Like the balance of communication and collaboration is important for us across the different site types. We know that that's going to be either of a personal nature or all the way through team division up to the cross-company level, so that you can accomplish building out those types of sites. All of these sites need to be usable, functional, recognizable, so that it looks like they're a part of your org. The intranet looks consistent, both with colors and branding. And as things change, certainly whether it's based on reorg, you acquire a new group, or it's just growth with new projects and people, you should be able to sustain and grow that through the design of your intranet. As you start to build out, as we start to deliver new capabilities, or you build out new functionality, you certainly want to maintain that through good change management. Everything should be accessible from the mobile device to keep people informed, whether that's internal users, external users. You define who has access to that content, and what they can create and consume is based on how you govern the sites, the document libraries, the lists, the different level of pages and news that you publish. And of course, by default, all of this is secure by design of our service, with even extra ways for you to be more proactive in how you can lock down content, limit who has access to it, or just do things in a reactive way from having to do an audit, an e-discovery. There's lots of ways to capture who has accessed what, or to limit who can access what. We do a lot of things in the service to optimize, and certainly you would expect that you would have good experiences of loading pages, watching videos, opening documents. We want that to be secure by design with single sign-on, with multi-factor authentication if you'd like, and all those apps and services that are integrated, not just SharePoint, but things that are experienced through SharePoint. Like Christian was mentioning, maybe a video that was uploaded to Microsoft Stream. You want to have that easily available and viewable through a SharePoint page without having to send somebody to the Stream portal to find that piece of content. So there's lots of things we're doing to integrate the services across the whole productivity stack. And we want a lot of that to be out of box. We want it to be configurable, but certain levels of things will dictate that you want to spend some budget and time on making a very custom look and feel or a custom application, of which, of course, you can do on top of this platform. It's just how you would approach what you can use out of the box, what you need to build in a more custom fashion, or what might just be some basic configuration or use of other tools out of the box. Our goal is to make you successful, and certainly we don't want to stop your innovation or use of the technology, but we do think that there's some governing rules. Obviously, if you talk to somebody like Christian or others in the community that are very governance first, we think that's a great way to approach how you design, who can access, what are the different roles that will create content, that will control what sites are available to other people, and certainly on down the roles of different levels of your intranet, from the top level all the way down to the content or the people that are integrating with it. We think it's important to have a line of sight both into what your business is doing. So as you design your intranet, and it needs to, of course, support the business, you want to have good line of sight for those that are managing the intranet to balance on being connected with the business owners. And certainly on our end, just to throw it in there, we do a lot to inform you of what's coming up, what's changed, and ways to communicate our change management. And that's also equally important as you own a project like this. A lot of it will be technology that's provided as a service, whether you choose us as a vendor or others in the cloud. A lot of those alignment efforts that we have to keep people informed are the same as you keep informed across the business. Again, that's both us and other vendors that provide a lot of this technology. We think an equal balanced team that has insights into not just what's coming, but what's possible and what's the right strategy for the business. And if you've got a strong team in place that's going to help design the intranet, manage it over time, we think this needs to be across not just the strategic business owner, but the realities of speaking with IT at the right time, approaching a developer when you need to, and of course a designer when you want that real nice interaction on something that's going to have high volume and higher interactivity. Certainly never to underestimate time and budget. Those are realities. Again, if you talk to somebody like Christian in the consultancy side, or somebody who's giving you best practice guidance at a strategic level, the intranet, we can't just say you just turn it on, it just works. There's a lot that just works out of the box, but there's a lot that you need to do to make it a great experience for yourself. And certainly if you're working on behalf of others, there's a lot that you can do both with time and budget, but also to save time and budget. But it's not something to be underestimated. And then finally, just an emphasis on change management and what I think is the more important point here, which is training. When you establish a site, it's not like the Field of Dreams. We wish that we could always hit a home run with Kevin Costner, but the realities are you can't just build it and they will come. If you build it and you train them, they will not only come, but they will use it and provide you feedback, and you will iterate over time for something that never ends. And that's a positive, because as your business changes, as the realities of the technology and the industry changes, so too you must reflect that in your sites. And we want to give you the flexibility to be able to do that. So another couple of slides, unless Christian, there's something that's popped up that we should address before we move on.
Yeah, the one question Karen asked about hub sites specifically, and I know you'll talk a little bit more about that, but was asking whether hub sites come with a navigation component that allows you to jump to the actual site from that hub site.
Yeah, so I'll answer that literally within about a minute of just a couple of slides, and then I'll make sure it's the first thing I demo, because it's a big part of hub sites, and certainly hub sites are a big part of what would be new, and certainly we want to make sure is clear as well.
Excellent. So, and I'll that's the only other question. So if you do have questions, please use the Q&A, and I'll make sure that we get through all of those, either if not during the session, then I'm sure immediately after. But those that I can answer by text, I'll do so as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So 3 slides. and really it's just to hit a few points home before I demo, is as you think about the different sites that are available to you, and think of it as an end user, you could go to the SharePoint home, click create site, and today you can create a team site or a communication site. And you can also control who creates those sites. So if you wanted to limit it not just to anybody. So if you create a team site, typically it's going to be for your team or department or a specific project that you've spun up where you want to have control over the where the assets live, who has access to them. If you wanted to make this more of an extranet B2B, you could certainly do that by turning on some of the external sharing features. And you get the sense of there's a lot of collaborative type scenarios. But this is where you're going to connect with other people to create and collaborate before you share information more broadly. When you're ready to share more broadly and you've got finished content that could be documents, videos, pages of information that you want to link to people, you then would maybe create a communication site. And again, this is an out of box, create the site, takes a couple of seconds, and then you start to layer in the look and feel of the site, the content of the site, and continuously publish to that site, whether it's a specific campaign or initiative, something where you, like I do for SharePoint, I like to share all of the news and announcements to everybody in the field. Before they go sell SharePoint, I want them to be up to speed on what it is that we're working on. There might be also something where you create a training site. Here is the best ways to use the new applications that we've built for time management or for checking in on a customer on site. This might be the use of a Power App, and you wanted to train somebody how to use the actual app that you built. You could easily create a couple videos, create a site where they could go and consume the videos, have a way for them to ask any questions, and certainly to read any policies around after they've taken this training, what the expectations are. That's a really common site type, and a really easy way to do that would be to create a communication site, layer in your content, get it ready for the masses, and then open it up and share it broadly in the way that you want to point people to it. So that's really where you tell your stories, you showcase new ideas or new projects, and these could even be services that you offer on a more consistent basis to everybody throughout the company. We expect people to create a lot of team sites, a lot of communication sites, and the realities of just as you start to dig into what are these things is a lot of the common technology that is shared between them. So as you as a user of the site or as a visitor of the site are starting to interact with a SharePoint site or one of these building blocks of your intranet, it's a common experience, whether you're working with the website itself, how to navigate it, how to view it on a mobile device, if you wanted to create and share news, or if you're working in a document library or a SharePoint list. Those experiences are common across these different site types. You might use them in different ways, but certainly the value is that there's a consistency of how you use SharePoint, and it's consistent across these different sites. Where it starts to get a little bit different as you look down at the bottom here is where we break out a couple of the common differences between the two. Today, when you create a team site, it creates an Office 365 group that really is just a list of people that have access to not only the site itself, but other applications that will then get provision for that list of people, like a shared inbox, a calendar, a planner plan, or like Christian was asking around our integration with Stream. You would actually get a dedicated Stream channel for where the team could put their team videos, like if they recorded a meeting or something. And then you manage who you invite, and they become a part of that team. And essentially that group is an Active Directory, then controls who has access to this content. A little bit different for communication sites. We don't automatically create a group, but you can control who accesses this site by either individuals or groups, and that could be a set of groups. And that would just be as you think of who are going to be my viewers on this site, I will go in and assign those permissions. And there's also a couple of different site designs that we offer. So when you create a communication site, you can deem, is this going to be more topic driven? Is this a place where I want to showcase my work? Or do I want to start with a blank slate and configure the section layouts, the web parts, exactly how I want? And that'll make more sense when I show you a little bit more visually what these are. So to get into kind of where Karen was asking the question is, what are these hub sites then? The benefit of a hub site is you can start a hub site as a fresh site, or when they're released, you'll be able to actually take an existing site and make it a hub site. And we'll have documentation on how to do that. But think in terms of I could either start with a team site or a communication site and make it a hub site. And very clearly within demo in a minute, you'll see exactly what that means and what are the components of a hub site. But the graphic here is trying to emphasize there's still a lot of shared tech, because there's a lot of the same libraries, lists, capabilities of pages and news, all that's common across hub sites, team sites, and communication sites, because essentially a hub site brings together that of where it started, if it was already a communication site or a team site. Or if I create a hub site from scratch, I can say I want it to be more communication oriented or more collaboration oriented. But then the things that we add that then are unique to hub sites are the ability to have cross-site navigation. That was part of the question. We'll make sure to emphasize that when we get to the demo. You get then a consistent theme and logo that's pushed down to all the sites that are joined under the hub site. The search automatically gets scoped from the hub. If I perform a search, it'll search across all of those joined sites, some of which might be visible in the navigation, some of which not everything has to join the navigation, but it will be technically joined to the hub site to give me increased scope of what content I want to up-level. And then, of course, we do things like roll-ups, where any news that's published at a sub-level on a team or communication site that's joined to that hub site will then roll up to the home site of the hub site, the home page of the hub site. And that includes news, activity, and actually I need to adjust this because we're now going to include events if you use the events web part. So hopefully, contextually, you get a sense of how these all these sites come together, and of course the intent of the different types of scenarios you would use the different types of sites. But let me exit out of PowerPoint here and bring up my demo environments, which hopefully should be ready here. So Christian, I just want to confirm you can see now my demo environment?
I sure can.
Okay, so I'm starting here on SharePoint Home. And how I got here, there's two ways in. The way that I actually do it for myself is I can type in my real environment, I can just type in office.com, and I've automatically chosen my SharePoint homepage to be my start page. So if I typed in office.com and I'm logged in, it would automatically take me to my SharePoint home. I could program that to go to different places of Office 365. But to be clear where we're at the SharePoint home, as if I click the SharePoint tile. And from the app launcher, you can obviously see I can get to the other services, and some of which I'll go into to show you a couple of integration points that we have. But if you haven't seen the app launcher, it's important to know a lot of this content is also coming from SharePoint in a very personalized view. So within the app launcher itself, I'm seeing a list of recent documents. The one that I'm presenting from is actually one of these, would have been one of these documents if I were in my real environment. And this is just pulling from the Microsoft Graph and showing me a list of recent content, of which I can always go see more and drill into everything that I'm working on. And some of that is based on what other people are doing, which is a big part of the design of our intranet. It's dynamic and personalized because the service knows who you work with and what content or sites that you work in, and then can infer here are other people or other content that you might be interested in. So one view of that is on the SharePoint home, we've got news. So here is news articles that were written by other people or by myself, and they're coming from various sites. So this is the legal site, the human resources site, the info portal that we created. And all of this is being aggregated because I'm active in these sites or I'm actively working with these people. So I'm going to see their news articles. So somebody like Chris McNulty, I work with a lot. And so I probably don't need to learn who is Chris or what is Chris working on. But there's another person in this view of something that caught my eye, which was one of our Contoso travel business owners in Norway. And I'm always interested in what that team is doing. So I really want to learn a little bit more about Torbjorn. And so now we have this embedded way within the intranet to not only create the sites and the content within it, but to also give you that experience of being able to learn through other people. And I just am starting here because this is a consistent experience, what we call people cards. And this is the expanded view of a people card that I would be able to access whether I was in a document library, here on the SharePoint home, in the Office Outlook, whether I'm in the web or even on the client. These cards are becoming more and more consistent, a way for me to learn about people and learn about what they're working on. Some of which comes from Active Directory. So here's how to contact Torbjorn, a little bit about him, some of the things that maybe he put in versus some of the things that maybe we get from the system. But when we start to get things like the organization view, you can see that here is who Torbjorn reports to, and obviously in this context, We just have it as a kind of a fake structure. But here's his reporting structure. What gets more interesting is what we start to do with the Microsoft graph. We can actually, through Torbjorn, show you who are his colleagues, and not explicitly who he reports to or who is he peers with, but who is he actively engaged with. That's important with a couple of things that I'll point out. When we get to files, you'll see another spin-off of that, where we see files that Torbjorn is actively engaged on. I won't see anything, though, here that I don't have access to view. So if Torbjorn's working on a secret project or just working on a project that I don't yet have access to, I won't see anything here that I don't have access to view. It just won't appear to me. That's just the way the service works. If I don't have permissions to that area where that content is stored, I'll never see it. But in the pivot of content that's been shared in a common team site, or it's been shared with things like the all company attribute, I of course would see it here. So that's a little bit about this kind of start page where I can launch and find more about people, the news that they're creating. I'll go into more about news when we get to the site level. But of course on this page you see a lot around sites. The sites that I frequent, what's happening in those sites. I can see the site activity, and I'm even getting suggestions about sites that I might be interested in based on sites that I've showed interest in. And then finally on this page you get a sense of here's everything across my intranet that other people have built on my behalf that they want to point everybody in the company to. So this is an area that IT or whomever would control within a company. Here are assets that we want people to be able to access, whether they're in one department or the other. This is for everybody. And some of which might be things like, I want to show you next, a broader portal that would be if you're starting to work at Contoso, this would be a great place to learn about Contoso, some of the policies, and be a new employee hire and get taken through sort of a workflow of training and onboarding. So if I went to that, you would see that from SharePoint Home, I can launch right into what we call Work at Contoso. This is a hub site. And at the parent level, this is actually built off of a communication site so that I have sort of a look and feel of a communication site. I've got a top navigation that I can control. If I'm an owner, I will see the edit button. I see news that's actually coming and being aggregated, not just at this communication site level, but as you can see, it's actually coming from a number of different sites. So one thing around hub sites is it pulls news from all of the sites that have been joined under it. So this is news from the Work at Contoso hub, so it was published at the hub level, but these are all coming from other sites that are joined underneath it. So it's a collection of both news published from the top down of the hub and from the bottom up that it aggregates. The same is if I've got a number of different events that are happening and being plugged in, and this is a little out of date because at the start of the year I need to load in a few new events, but these events would be a roll-up of events from across all of these different sites that have been joined to this hub. Now to get to Karen's answer, I guess it was a few more minutes than I thought. At the top is the top level navigation that cuts across all of these different sites that have been joined, and here we're linking to a few of them, that take me to either a communication site that's below this level or a team site. You can join either a team site or a communication site into the hub. For all of these sites, you'll get a consistent navigation. So if I go to the Give Planning Team site, you'll see that this is also a communication site. It's got its own level of navigation within the site itself, but I maintain that cross-site navigation, and I even maintain the logo of whatever it is that was the visual logo for the collection of sites. You could have it be the same, or each site could have its own logo. You could certainly do that. But as I navigate this page, you'll get a sense that here's all the news that's only at this site, but flows up to the hub. Here are all the events. And of course, as I start to look at other ways of designing this page, I could create and use the different web parts to pull in information, to highlight content. The other thing that happens when you navigate these different sites is if you notice this blue hue and this green hue, as I navigate to these different sites that fall under this hub, they all share a common look and feel. So now I'm on a different site, and I see that it's using the same color palette, of which if I went into it just to show you what the different choices that you can make, you can control what the custom look and feel is. And we've actually gone to an extreme to only show this custom theme, or sorry, this sole theme that we want to use in this environment, of which I can go in as a site owner and customize the different look and feel. And I'll change a few things so you can see what changes. So if I change more to a green with an accent color of an orange, you can see here's the green, here's the orange. Very easy to do and very easy to customize and configure to the extent that you only want certain things to be allowed here as an owner, or even at the IT level. You can publish custom site themes, or you can limit the themes that are showing there. And that's true for site designs as well, which is really what I want to show you next. So if you get the context of what is a communication site, essentially this is a pretty simple one, and how it flows under a hub site, you're about 2/3 of the way there of understanding a lot of what these different building blocks offer. So before I go into the collaborative side of a team site, I really quickly want to show you what's the editing experience. So you get a sense of what are the types of choices you can make in terms of the layout of the pages. So if I wanted to add a new layout at the top, or what's probably more appropriate to do something here just underneath my hero web part, I now want to do something that has multiple columns. So I want to add something that has 3 columns, and it's going to pull in a number of different types of information. And I'll keep this pretty simple so it goes fast. But I want to pull in something that's based on a web search, and we'll see what comes up for Utah. This is powered by Bing, and it's going to pull in any asset that's under the common Creative Commons law. So if I wanted to pull in this nice pretty picture of an arch, I can do that. Once the image is pulled through, let's see if we do that again. Let's try it one more time. After it's in here, I can actually go in now and further edit this if I wanted to. So I can edit it inline if I wanted to only show, you know, a part of the image, add my caption, and then when I move out, you can see that I can now crop inline. This is something that is just starting to launch out into the production environment in our targeted release. Another thing that's usually commonly used is this. If I wanted to show only PPTs, we could use the highlighted content web part to dynamically show anything based on what it is that we program. So you have options, whether it's in a communication site, a news article, or in a page that lives in a team site. You have the same capabilities to do a lot of what I'm showing you here. And let's say I wanted to show a list of, here's all the content in this site that I then want to show from a type that's a document, but not any type of document. I want to show just PowerPoint. So you can see there's only 2 PowerPoints, and instead of the cards, I want this to be more of a list view. And you can start to see how I can build out really nice dynamic experiences. And anytime now somebody adds a new PowerPoint that's been approved or now lands in this environment with this criteria, it'll show up and it'll be a part of my site automatically. And if I want to, I can add below it and it'll just exist in the same column, or I can now add right next to it something that maybe is a little bit more dynamic, and based on what Christian was asking about, I want to add actually a stream web part. Not a stream web part, but a stream web part. So I can search through the toolbox of different choices that I have in adding web parts. I can add the stream player here, and I forgot to have this open on the background, so let me do that. Go into stream. And I'm just going to grab the first video that catches my eye, but this is essentially the stream portal. And I'm going to go in here and grab this video with the Roam time lapse. And if I wanted to plug that into my site, if I get back to the right one, I can just plug in that URL. If I wanted it to have a unique start time, I could do that. And essentially within just a couple of clicks and a couple of minutes, I've updated my page, or I've created it for the first time. And now the next person visiting would see the image or the set of images, set of documents, the video, and hopefully you get a sense that it's very easy to edit these pages and drop on the components that you would want to highlight, of which Play Inline are interactive and certainly have a lot of value right there in the context of the page that you're laying out, for the context of what's the information you want to share. So if I go back, before I go into collaboration in terms of a team site and what does that look like within all of this, I want to highlight a little bit of what it takes to create a new site. And so since we'll talk about team sites, I want to go in and create a new team site. And so now we have the ability to not only create within seconds a new team site, but we have the ability for you to bring in your own site designs. So that basically dictates what is the look and feel. And so I'll choose this custom travel impact project template, site design, which is going to say it's going to have this pre-existing layout, predetermined layout. And it can also pre-populate things with lists and columns, different web parts that you're going to configure and use, and a lot of ways for you to get started in a more standardized way, and of course save you a lot of time. So we'll just say Utah hello, and make sure that this group is not taken. Since we're creating a team site, we're also creating an Office 365 group. I want this to be more broadly used with a lot of people. So I want to open up the permissions by default. I can choose if I want it to be classified. I can also choose if I want it to be public throughout the company or very private to only people that I name. If you know Office 365 groups, I'm just going through and determining what type of group is this. Is it public or private? And then how do I classify my site? How is it to be used by other people? And I want to keep it open to be generally used, so it's not super secret documents that are being stored on this. I can go in here and I can layer in who I also want to help me with this, to be an additional owner and a member, and I can change this at any time. So let's add Andy as well, or sorry, Adam. And CJ if she's still in our system. So after I click finish, in the time that it takes for the screen to refresh, after I clicked finish, the site is now created. So I love to pause there for a second by the reality of, if you've been using SharePoint for a while, one of the things the team has been spending a lot of time, and I think is doing a fantastic job on, is enabling you to do things more quickly. So creating a site shouldn't be minutes of waiting. It should be seconds and it's ready. And not only is it seconds and ready, what you see here now that's running on the right-hand side is what we call a custom site design site script. So this is running a script, and if you look at it before I close it out, you can see what is it doing. It's creating and updating a new list. It's called customer tracking, so it's adding a new list, created the list, customized some columns, added some new event collateral, and then triggered a flow to actually record this as a home page to send to the IT team that it's actually been created. Not only will it be tracked in the normal ways, but they can dictate in a Microsoft flow a lot of things. An email that could be sent, a list somewhere else could be updated so that they could track things. So because this is repeatable now, anybody that chooses this site design will get this look and feel. And this one might take a little bit to get through this last set of assets. So I'm going to go in and just show you back from the SharePoint home, one of this collaboration sites that we've been using now for a little bit. So let me go to the strategy and planning site.
Hey, Mark,
Yeah.
got a question. Eli was asking about adding a new column to help filter and organize events. And he says it wasn't clear how to add columns in the edit and view pages.
To add a column to an existing list, part of what I just showed you is it's being done programmatically, just to be clear. But if you're on a list and you have a new column that you want to add, you would just go to the list itself. So I'll go in, and obviously this is being done programmatically from the site scripting. But if I go in, we'll just kind of tweak the events list, sorry, the list itself. Let me go in and I'll create a quick list so you can see. And hopefully not take too much time. We'll call this list Eli. And create that. And then it gives me a pretty default view, right? It's not too exciting out of the box. But if I wanted to go and add different existing columns, I can go in and on this plus button, I can go in and choose what type of column do I want that to be. If it's a single line of text, I can now go and call this one answer 1. And that's just a single line of text, and click save. If I wanted to go in and create another one that's a yes or no type value, and I can go in, oh, yes. And hopefully that answers your question if that's what you were asking, Eli, to be able to go in and add them manually. What the script was doing was going and adding an existing column based on the criteria that they defined as what's the column type, and of course adding it to it then makes it more robust of a list. That then when I go and add a new item, I'm obviously going to start populating those different rows and columns of data. So if I go back home, and I'm now here on a, let's see, where did I end up? Here we go. All right, so this is essentially to replicate, if you've been using a team site for a while, there have been a number of things that have been created. Obviously, a lot of news. People have added quick links. If they wanted to, they could give them a graphic or not as you navigate through that. This is the use of a people web part, so it has that same characteristic of being able to hover on somebody, but here you can actually list who are the people that you want to showcase. You can give them a title if you wanted to say these are our project owners, and then you have that ability to then navigate to their people card off of the people that you've chosen. And as I scroll down, you'll see that some of the other integrations that we have are, here is a look at what our integration looks like when we release the planner web part. This is not yet out, but it's something that we showed at the Microsoft Ignite, and this is the planner web part within the context of a team site. If I scroll down, you'll see the use of how we've programmed the site activities. Here is if you had created a list. This is a view on this list where it just shows 2 columns, and it pairs nicely in a 1/3, 2/3 layout. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go, and at this level, I want to take another pause and just show you the other types of web parts. If you go and expand this, you can see all the different types of web parts that you can use to bring in a lot of different types of content from across Office 365, and even within a team site, you can bring in assets based on group connectors, which are coming soon. But even some of the stuff that we talked about was being able to program Twitter, being able to bring in Yammer discussions, being able to pull in and highlight news either at the home level or on individual pages that you create. And the same level of editing that I've been showing you at the home level is exactly what you do to create news. So if you want to go in and create news, it goes in and gives you the ability to create a new page and do everything that I was mentioning around using those different web parts. If you go into something that's more like a library, certainly there's a lot of innovation that we've done at the document library level. And you can see here we've highlighted one asset at the top, and you hover over that and you get a little sense of how many times it's been viewed and who owns it or who touched it last. Pretty common. And as you go into here, if you click on something and go into the information pane, you get a sense a lot more about that content. Or if you own updating the metadata, you can go in here and inline adjust. If this is now beyond customer ready, it's actually something you want to pull back. It's not yet ready. Change it to internal only. And if you'd created a view to show only assets that have been deemed approved for customer ready, then you can control this as an owner of the library and showcase it to other people with only approved content. So it keeps just visibility if that's how you wanted to use it. You can also get a sense of here's everything that's been happening in this document library based on the history of recent activity of all of these assets. So if I uncheck and I go to the information pane, I can see a lot of what's going on. And I can also change the look and feel. If I wanted to see something more visually, I can go in and get more of a visual tiled view, which will then render as best it can thumbnails across all of the different content types that we have, of which is up to about 270 types of content we can derive previews on. And as you click into them, if there's something that's a little bit more than just an Office document, we will still render them in line within the context of the site itself. So this is actually rendering a Visio diagram, and you can do that across multiple content types, even Photoshop documents, Illustrator files, MRIs, and those kind of CAD type files. But if I unselect this, one other feature that's pretty interesting that we announced that gets into not only building blocks of your intranet, but how to better manage and maintain the validity and the value of when people find your content or how they find it. Sometimes it's based on information that you make available to other people to view. This view is a little bit easier to see. What I'm doing is I'm choosing a new feature we call files that need attention. And this is telling me this asset or this collection of assets, as you see, are actually missing information about the audience. So I'll go in here on this Excel file, and you see the audience is missing. I can now go in and it highlights right here the audience information that's required by whomever manages this library. And I can go in here and maybe I want to list this one as NDA approved. And you'll see that it should go out of this view in terms of it's now resolved. And now if I were to go and refresh this, obviously it's then going to only show me the recent files that still need attention. So that's a really nice feature to be able to manage content. And that's the way you can see it through a document library. And this is an area of focus for us to be able to do more and more of, so that not only when you publish your content, you can do it in an easy, friendly way, but so that you can manage the environment, keep it up to date, especially when there is required information.
Hey, Mark, is so there's a, I think, good question. Kieran is asking about the sensitivity setting of a team site, and whether it will automatically apply like the DLP rules to anything that's any content within that team site.
Yeah, it's a great question. Today, we do some standard things based on the classifications that you choose. And the team that works on the SharePoint Admin Center, the SharePoint Online Admin Center, in conjunction with the Information Protection team, which is at a more parent level, some of those things that you do across Exchange and SharePoint or for one or the other. But where you go to program the data loss prevention or some of your auditing and e-discovery is performed at that parent level. But as you choose the classification, you'll be able to actually define, what do we mean when we say this is a classified site, or this is internal only, or customer ready? Today we have some dials that are set that are relatively uniform in terms of things like, if I have something that's deemed classified, that will mean that you can't turn on external sharing. If I have something that needs to be externally shared, I need to classify that site as ready for partners or ready for customer. And that set of classification, whether it's NDA only and it's based on invitation, or it's something that's more broadly open to the public based on whomever I invite, it'll reset and set some of those things. But the answer today is it doesn't yet pull in automatically a DLP policy or automatically pull it in based off of a classification or a site design that derived from those policies that you've set. You would still need to do that a little bit more manually, where if you wanted to have a site that is protected by DLP with various policies that you've set in place, you can absolutely do that, but it won't yet be based on the classification that you choose at the time of the site creation. Some of the features will get activated or not, but not yet at the level of DLP being a part of that at the time of creation.
I know that there is actually a lot of conversation around this, the broader topic, the add-on, like the Microsoft Tech community sites. Definitely go take a look there. And I know that there are also some related requests out on user voice around this. So, definitely some community locations we can go and find and participate in those discussions and make sure Microsoft is aware of your requests if you have special requests around that.
Yeah, and I would say, as a future online component, or certainly if you have these as topics locally, there's a whole breadth of sort of security and compliance information that either a webinar with somebody like Bill or locally, with a security expert. There's a lot that what is happening behind, how you can control governance, how you can do things reactively, proactively, what we do on the service for everybody by default. It's a great topic and certainly underpins everything that I'm showing you, because you can protect this content at a very ad hoc way in terms of, I just want to set some permissions so that only certain people are working on this, but it's certainly okay if others come across it, to a very lockdown environment that tracks and manages and even notifies me for whatever has happened on that site. Yep. To the extent then, of course, for broader things like DLP, e-discovery, or audit trails that you need to perform. A great topic, and I would encourage it to be a standalone offering too, beyond just going and engaging in the community, which is, there's a lot of experts there as well.
And Mark, we've got just under 10 minutes.
Yep.
One, before you move over, the last one that you showed, because I had the exact same question Eric asked, but when you're talking about the missing data from that list, is it possible to set the missing, like for one field for multiple items, or do you have to go one at a time?
No, you can do multiple items as long as the structure of the metadata is consistent for that asset, which is almost impossible to not do when you're in the same library or the same list. And the way the feature works today is it just works at the list or library level. So if I have multiple things that are missing, and let me see, I'll just go back to it, see if I can just show you. If I have multiple things that are missing and I select multiple, it's going to then narrow down to just the information that I can then affect at a single time. So if I go into audience, and fingers crossed, I'm going to make all of these customer ready. it should then apply to all three of them. And oh, it did one, but it should apply to all of them. Let me try that just across two. Because I believe we got this. Try this. There we go. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Maybe difference of asset type, I doubt. But yes, you're able to resolve multiples at the same time. But if you notice when I click on two items, see how the set of metadata gets a lot smaller? If I click on just one, not only do I see all the metadata, but I see a lot of the activity that's happening on that particular item. So when I multi-select, I can do a lot of things. I can now download multiple assets. I can move, delete, do a lot of actions across different assets. But inclusive of that is any of the common metadata that I can change across all content, whether it's content or a list item, that I'd be able to do that. And it's not just the one that's missing. I could do that and add a single owner across multiple items if I wanted to. All right, so with just a few minutes left, let me load up what I wanted to really just end off, and I'll do this pretty quickly because there's a lot of different videos you can go and watch and get a good sense of what does the SharePoint mobile app offer. And so if you think about what I showed you with the SharePoint home and of course the different things that we've been looking at in the different sites, this is what it all looks like when you access it on your mobile device. I'm on an Android tablet. I could easily be on a Windows device. I could easily be on an iPad, an iPhone, or a smaller Android device. We obviously have a mobile app in the different stores that are available and being improved pretty much every quarter with new features. And so some of the things that you can do, of course, you can see all of your sites. I'll go into one of the sites that we were looking at from the communication sites perspective. This is the Contoso Family Travel Program, and you'll see because it's a part of a hub site, we get the hub site navigation, we get the assets on the page, and as we scroll down, it even maintains some of the new parallax feature so that you can see it's a nice end user experience. But of course, it'll just render out the content as you would expect. So that you can see here as the use of the Yammer web part, I can see different messages that have been posted, different cards from different threads, different events, and that everything looks really nice, even to the extent if I find somebody, I can click on their face and see a little bit more about them, who they work with, what they're working on. If I go back up to the parent level and I go into the news feed, similar to how we saw at the top of the SharePoint home, this is an aggregation of all the news happening around me. So as I navigate through, you can obviously see this is news being published to all the various different sites. And if I go into here and look at this news article about Iceland and the different adventure travel programs, this is actually loading up a page coming from, maybe I clicked on one that wasn't quite finished. This is pulling news from throughout the different sites that I'm active in, and it's going to show me in a high fidelity to show me whether it's got images, whether it's got different web parts that are being used to highlight content. If there were a Power BI chart that was used, I'd be able to interact with that. And you get a sense that I can navigate through all the different content. And we now have what we call the me tile, which is essentially, here's everything I'm working on. This is the content that I'm most active in. And if somebody had published a news article and I wanted to save it to read for later, I could go and do that. And here is, if I go to December 2017, the news article, and I tap save for later, it's going to save it for later and then be available to me in just the saved area, where after I go and read something, maybe when I'm done with it, I can say remove from saved, it'll adjust that, and now I'm trimmed down to just those things that I wanted to keep track of. The final thing that I wanted to show, of course, in context with the value of once you have a lot of assets in your intranet, you're starting to use them, share them, create them, is you can, of course, easily find them. And I can easily find people. So if I wanted to find somebody like Jeff Teeper, I can do that and go into results. And of course, I can see sites that Jeff owns, files that Jeff owns, or, of course, people, Jeff himself. And then I can further learn through Jeff, who he works with, what he works on. But this is real enterprise level search across all of the different lists, libraries, sites, different sites that I create throughout my intranet. It gives me a real way to search across my intranet from the value of my device when I'm on the go. So Christian, I know you asked for 1 minute. I'll give you 4 minutes, not only to wrap up, but to cover if there was that one last question you think we should cover verbally. And while you do that, I'm just going to bring up just the last slide that's always just a little fun, which is what's coming.
Yeah, I think the one thing, I think there was a question, and I was going to follow up to see if there's a longer reply to that, but was around other site templates. So we talk about the communication site and the team site, but like list templates and some of those other things that people may have created or maybe using actively, whether those can also be incorporated into the new hub site model.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll try not to. We're actually tomorrow, just to give you a little sneak peek, ready to publish some information about a feature that we've started to release and talked about at Microsoft Ignite. And this is our custom site designs, which really follow on the ability that we have some out-of-box site designs. When you go to create a communication site, you can choose from 3 site designs. And of course, now with the custom site design capability, you can create your own. And a lot of that is what I showed you when we created the team site. That's choosing a custom site design. Part of what you can do is in a part of that script that runs, if when somebody creates a new site, you want it to automatically be joined to that hub site, you can do that. As a part of the site script, it'll create the site, it'll create the lists and columns and organize the layout and whatever you have in the site design as it's dictated. And then one last hook is there's a call that can be made that says, make this site an associated site of this particular hub. So if a template or the site design itself dictates not only what does the site look like, but where it should live, that's one integration point with site designs for hubs. Certainly, hubs are a little bit different in terms of they're only to be created by admins. So when you create a hub site, right now the hub site itself essentially takes on its own form. You dictate whether you want it to be a communication site or a team site. If you want then that team site or communication site that's going to be your hub site to then have a script run against it so that you can create a site design that's intended for every hub site, it would be possible and a little bit more manual than the out-of-box when you click Create Site. But essentially, the site design is nothing more than, I want to take this site and do this to it. And you can do that both during the time of provisioning, and you can do it obviously during, after a site's been provisioned, which is the case for hub sites. A lot more to come from a documentation perspective. Lots of links I'll have in my post tomorrow. Very relevant in terms of being able to, make your intranet even more configurable or more customized to your look and feel and your way that you want people to use the content or access it or view it. And there's just a whole host of things that you can do at the time of provisioning or even after the fact that will help you manage the environment in a much more efficient way.
Awesome. Mark, hey, thanks a lot for jumping on this and presenting today. Great topic and great job. And thanks as always for joining in to my different online antics.
You're welcome. And obviously, thank you for the time and thanks everybody. And any questions, pose them through your normal channels or certainly always come directly to me if you'd like.
And a couple things I just wanted to, if you did, those people that are in region that have not been participating, so the Utah SharePoint Office 365 user group. So we meet next on the 23rd, I believe. And so we're going to meet at UDOT in, I believe that's Taylorsville. But you can find more information. You've got the URL there. Of course, the big thing is that if you're in or out of the region, we've got SharePoint Saturday Utah happening, the big one on February 3rd. It's free. Go to spsevents.org to register. Definitely come out. Tell your friends, family members, coworkers about it. We got plenty of space for it. I don't know how many speakers we landed on for this thing, but we've got people coming from around the world to participate. And there's also skiing on the Friday beforehand. It's Share Ski. So if you'd like to do a little more networking with members of the community, come on out for that as well. And thanks a lot, Mark, and thanks everybody for joining. And I'll end it here.
Thank you, and have a good day, everybody.